Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Day 2 of the Navy League's Small Business Opportunities webinar series. I'm Luke Lorenz, Senior Manager for Legislative Affairs at Navy League Headquarters. Today's discussion will focus on small business programs. I'd like to introduce to you Navy League National Executive Director Mike Stevens, retired 13th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, who will introduce today's speakers. Sir, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Luke, and thanks to everyone for joining Navy League Learns for Day 2 of our Small Business Opportunities webinar series. Thank you again to our sponsor, IBM, for making this week possible. Our speaker today is Mr. Jimmy Smith, Director of OSBP. Mr. Smith oversees small business acquisition policy, strengthening government and private sector partnerships, and fostering opportunities to leverage small businesses as strategic advantage for the benefit of our warfighters. Thank you, Mr. Smith, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mike. Thanks again, and appreciate you guys hosting this event along with IBM. Been looking forward to it ever since yesterday. So with that, let's go ahead and get those slides up. And I want to show everyone the Department of the Navy's OSBP's year-end review. Basically an encapsulation of what we've been doing over the past year. You can see from the stats and different information we have available to you on a video. So stand by for that. Well, thank you very much for showing that video. That's actually just the second time that I've shown that video. It's been posted on our website for quite some time now, but just wanted to make sure everyone got a chance to look at the expansive efforts that we involve ourselves in across the Navy and the use of small businesses. Every single one of those opportunities you saw involved small businesses working in support of the Navy and Marine Corps team. Okay, let's get on back to the slides then. Okay, let's go on to slide 3. As you heard yesterday from Secretary Gertz, we use small business programs and small business efforts and industry partners in support of the government team in direct support of our mission. If you look at the National Defense Strategy, we have 3 lines of effort that's communicated inside the Navy Operations Plan, and in direct concert with those 2 documents is our Small Business Operation Plan, which you see to the right. 3 main focus areas: people, capability, and processes. I encourage you to read all 3 documents so that you understand the customer base that you'll be working with if you want to support the Navy and Marine Corps team. Next slide. To get a little bit deeper into the lines of effort for which we're involved ourselves in, make sure that you understand that you're a part of providing warfighting capability to those that need it or to those that support those that need it. We're in that business of providing capability for folks that are going into harm's way. We want to see them come back to their families, and we need you to focus on efforts that makes them stronger. There are a number of things that happen in our world from time to time to create barriers, but we have to overcome them in order to keep in line the warfighting responsibilities that we have. If you look on this slide, you see CMMC, the Capability Maturity Model Certification Program, and Category Management. Those are 2 things that are barriers to what we're trying to do, but we have to overcome them in order to get our business done. If you don't understand those things that are facing you as a challenge, my office, can help you support those things to get those barriers cleared so that we can support the warfighter. Next slide. If you saw very quickly during the video, I wanted to highlight some of the points that we have as successes from the FY19 by the numbers. If you look upper left-hand corner, $16.61 billion were awarded to small businesses that served as primes last year. On average, that's about 18 cents of every dollar that the Navy spent went towards a small business as a prime. Something we're very proud of. And if you look across the board, I'll show you some more of these in detail about how we're doing in the different socioeconomic categories. Phase 3 SBIR awards, 145 Phase 3 SBIR awards awarded last year. And those are significant, and they're providing warfighting capability to the warfighter. And another one that I'm very proud of, we almost reached 500, 488 outreach events conducted across the small business enterprise to ensure that small business partners understand their Navy customers and what we're here for and how we can help them achieve their ends. Next slide. Looking back further into the goals and requirements that we have to satisfy by way of our metrics, the gold orange line on this particular slide is our requirement. The green is where we actually ended up by way of end of year results. As I mentioned earlier, 18.49% of every dollar we spent across the Navy went towards a small business as a prime. And you can see what that equates to by way of billions of dollars. Next slide. We're going to break down into the different socioeconomic categories: small disadvantage, service disabled veteran, hub zone, and women small businesses. We've exceeded our requirements. The charts that are in yellow, the bar graphs that are in yellow, that's where our requirements ended up. Orange is where our requirements are. And over the last 4 years, we've done an exceptional job of not only meeting our requirements, but exceeding them. Next slide. Long range acquisition plan. This is the most helpful tool that I think you have as an industry partner, and we have it hosted on the OSBP website. This is a snapshot of our website. If you go to doing business with OSBP and go down to long range forecasting plan, you can see what Navy plans on contracting out with for over the next 5 years that we plan on doing business. And it's across 10 major buying commands is where we have information. I believe at last count, 7 of the commands had information posted on the site. And this is one of the most helpful tools that I've seen industry partners use that we have at our disposal to make you completely aware of upcoming solicitations that the different commands plan on announcing and putting out for bid. You can see and start planning ahead for those opportunities before they show up on your doorstep or in Fed Biz Ops for everyone else to see. You can actually get an early glimpse at what our planning and contracting opportunities are and how they exist. Next slide. This is a quick snapshot. At last count, the long range forecasting plan made up over 80 pages, 80 Excel spreadsheet pages of information about upcoming contract awards and planned solicitations that we plan on moving out on across the Navy and Marine Corps team. Next slide. One of the other programs that I'm very proud of that we have through the Office of the Secretary of Defense is the Mentor Protege program. The Mentor Protege program, if you are not aware, is a program where DoD incentivizes large industry partners to assist small industry partners to achieve common goals and the ends in order to allow them to make opportunities, business capability, and improve their processes. We can actually spend up to $3 million per teaming agreement for an industry partner to help another industry partner along, serving in best interest and support of the warfighter. We currently have over 80 Mentor Protege agreements out there, and we're looking for more opportunities of where large industry partners can help a small business partner, and we will pay that large industry partner up to $3 million per agreement in order to make those partnerships and arrangements occur in order to bring along the small business in order to get them situated to where they can be self-sustained for the opportunities that they face and want to take on by way of bringing in more business. Next slide. A little shameless plug here. Hopefully we're over the COVID-19 virus by the end of August. Would like to invite everyone out to Navy Gold Coast. Last year, we had over 2,000 attendees attend our small business event in San Diego. And it's a very, very broadly advertised, and we highly encourage industry partners to attend. There's opportunities for you to network with your industry partners, meet with small business professionals from all across the services will be there, and GSA and other activities across the Navy. This is a nice event for you to come and take opportunity to invest in yourself and grow your company into that what you want it to be. Next slide. For tomorrow, I wanted to quickly introduce Ms. Cindy Schaefer and Mr. Tom Frankfurt. Ms. Cindy Schaefer is the head of all things contracts for the Department of the Navy. She is the head contracting authority for the Navy. And Mr. Tom Frankfurt, he is the Assistant General Counsel to Secretary Gertz. So if you want to get legal or understand some ins and outs regarding your contracts, these folks will be available for you tomorrow from the same 3 to 4 time frame. Next slide. And on Thursday, we have representatives from the small business community at every single major buying command that makes up the Navy and Marine Corps available for you to talk. My deputy, Ms. Arvis Washington, will be moderating this event, and we have representatives from the Marine Corps and the Navy, all of the folks who buy things within the Navy and Marine Corps. Those small business professionals will be available to you on Thursday. Next slide. And on Friday, we're going to hear from Mr. Robert Smith from the Office of Naval Research, and you're going to hear about the SBIR and STTR programs from him. There are some social media sites there that advertise what they do, but I highly encourage you to stick around for the Friday event as well. And next slide, please. And to further advertise what my office can do for you, we're connected on social media and every platform out there. You have no reason why you can't reach us in any of these platforms. So I highly encourage you to take advantage of the instructional videos we have, the guidance that we can provide to help you know your customers before you go meet them for those one-on-one in-person meetings. Next slide. And with that, I will start to take questions.
Sir, thank you so much for that presentation. As you mentioned, we'll now move into the question and answer portion, and we have our first question here. Mr. Smith, has the Navy contemplated opening up blanket purchasing agreements on a regular basis to allow new suppliers to compete for work?
Across the Navy, we have several opportunities that provide that option for you. We have a number of contracts that are available by way of Seaport. We have MAC contracts. These are large, global, far-reaching contracts that have all of the services covered that we foresee we're going to need and use. Those contracts have on-ramps and they have off-ramps for services. So the opportunity exists. I highly encourage you to look up Seaport NextG for opportunities to work in that vein for us. And that's mostly in the line of services, not necessarily products.
Thank you, sir.
That's
And
a
our
great
next question touches on what you just mentioned with Seaport NextG. Our attendee asks, another huge barrier for small businesses concerns the Navy's insistence on using cost plus fixed fee prime contracts for professional services. Will the Navy consider using FP Low and/or T&M contracts to promote prime contract awards to SBCs?
I think that's a great question for Ms. Cindy Schaefer to answer tomorrow. That's right up her alley. As you may understand how we're organized here, I'm the small business professional here to be your advocate for making sure that you're treated fairly across the board. She's in charge of contracts and those opportunities that actually turn paper into money and opportunities for your small businesses to thrive. So let's save that one down for Ms. Cindy Schaefer tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is, one issue for new small businesses is to find a prime that will take on the small biz in the MPP program. Is there any way your office can help small businesses in this regard, matchmaking events or some sort of way to connect these two different types of organizations?
We have a number of matchmaking events that we conduct all across the country, and I highly recommend those to anyone, but we don't per se want to get in the middle of an industry partner and another industry partner coming up with a teaming arrangement. This should be something that you two industry partners find mutually beneficial to one another, and we, the government, will benefit from the services or products that you provide. So we don't want to overstep our bounds of being impartial to industry partners and their ability to compete for work. So we are only going to go so far into that relationship building. We will conduct events where you can get together and come up with teaming agreements and matchmaking opportunities on your own, but we're not going to be there in the middle of fostering those kind of opportunities. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. What new challenges has the COVID-19 pandemic posed to your office, and what's the economic fallout likely to look like, if anything?
Well, actually, to look at the numbers, and I think Secretary Gertz may have quoted some of these yesterday, we're actually ahead of schedule and ahead of spend on what we were planning to do this fiscal year. From a small business perspective, we're already ahead $1.5 billion. We've spent more this year than on average in the past 3 years at this point in time. So comes from, from time to time, there's an opportunity that comes from tragedy. And this is actually one of those situations where we're open for business and we still have a mission to conduct. No one said because of COVID-19, go tie up all your ships, go tie up the Navy, go tie up all your submarines. We're still out there and we're still open for business. And we're finding opportunities where we can foster more opportunities to do business with us during this time frame. From an economic impact, we have a number of stimulus packages that are out there that have come down from Congress, and we're making maximum use of that money in order to go off and support our need. Now, we're not giving money away for everyone to go off and use. These missions require funding and require support. And if you go back to those guiding principle documents that I highlighted at the beginning, those are the things that we're investing in first and foremost. Taking care of our warfighter and making sure they can get back safely to their families. That's first and foremost important. Great question, though.
Sir, one of our attendees represents a certified signage company based in California, and they ask, how can they apply to become part of the Mentor Protege program? And does their mentor have to be another signage company, or can it be a general contractor?
You do not need to have it be another signage company. It can be a company that you find an affiliation with, a partnership with through another means. But you can contact my office and we can help you with those details about fostering that agreement that needs to be written and approved by the Office of the Secretary of Defense in order for it to go forward. We're willing to help you out in every way possible to achieve those partnership agreements and get those partnerships up and running. Miss Mercedes Thurston is the person in my office that manages that program. So I've got someone very close to me who can actually pull together those opportunities to help you be successful.
Thank you, sir. We have another attendee whose organization is just coming off of a large defense contract. All of their personnel have clearances. However, they don't have the current funding or opportunity to set up a facility clearance. How is the DoD enabling startups by holding personnel clearances temporarily until a facility clearance is in place?
Yes, holding personnel security clearances in place is a challenge. And without being on a contract where that work is required, those things don't go off into a status of where they're dormant. They actually go off into a status of where they can be reconstituted over time once you're back on another contract vehicle. But in order to do the work required, in order to maintain status, you need to be working under a support contract that allows you to exercise those responsibilities. But another great question, I think Mr. Tom Frankfurt can go into some much more further details on that particular topic area when we bring him in tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. We have another attendee who is interested in the Direct to Phase 2 SBIR contract program. They ask, what is the easiest way to meet with the correct personnel to sign a memorandum of understanding in order to pursue that type of contract? How can they find the right individuals to work with?
Well, on Friday, you're going to hear from the experts from the Office of Naval Research by way of Mr. Robert Smith. But I'll give you a little insight that you have from me today. Those small business professionals that work across the 10 major buying commands, they're your advocates to make sure you get pointed in the right direction in order to get those things that you provide sold to the government so that we can take full advantage of them and put them to use. So 10 professionals that I know very closely that work in the 10 different buying commands that are responsible for those lines of effort in order to bring those products and services to bear. So let us help you. Office of Small Business can help you. Furthering Phase 2 contracts and getting those opportunities in front of you, you will hear in excruciating detail on Friday from Bob Smith and his folks over at the Office of Naval Research on how to go about doing that directly through them.
Sir, our next attendee asks, is having a seat on Seaport NextG key to responding to Navy opportunities?
It's absolutely key for most of the commands across the Navy, except for NAVAIR. Most of the commands across the Navy are mandated to use Seaport NextG. We've basically gone out and developed a major opportunity contract for us to go off and seek services instead of everyone having to go off and award their own individual contract. It's basically a one-stop shopping. Rates have already been negotiated. All of these opportunities to not go through a full-blown lengthy contracting process have already been done. We can basically write line order tasks to go off and fulfill the work that needs to be done. So from a streamlined standpoint, Seaport NextG is a great opportunity for us, the government, to cut down on the bureaucracy required in order to award work to people who can get the work done for the Navy and Marine Corps team. There's on-ramps and off-ramps to these opportunities. for those companies that are interested in doing business with us in that regard. But it's absolutely key because we're mandated to use that vehicle first. And if I can't use something that's on Seaport NextG, I need to go off and get a waiver. Someone from a buying command will need to go off and get a waiver that says there's nothing on Seaport NextG that satisfies my requirements. Therefore, I need to go outside of it. And that's not necessarily an easy thing for someone to go off and do. Seaport NextG was created to be broad and all-encompassing, and to do something outside of it, you have to prove that your requirements cannot be met on Seaport NextG. Thank you for that question.
Does your office do business with new government contractors with limited past performance, or are the opportunities for such organizations only through subcontracting?
So the Navy has a great deal of support towards small businesses that want to get started in the small business world. I basically have a 10-step process, and you can visit it via our website, on how to go about being a partner and doing business with the Navy. A 10-step process. And if you have to follow those 10 steps in order, or the system punishes you. And it's not a Navy system, this is the entire federal government system. If you can complete that process effectively, you're in business to do business with us. Now, getting past performance and those opportunities, I highly encourage small businesses to partner with a larger industry partner to gain some experience, gain that past performance recognition for what you do, and then let that spring forward into an opportunity where you can step out and be a prime in order to support the needs of the government. But without past performance, it is a very, very difficult road to demonstrate that you have done work for the government, and we can have confidence in your ability to get it done again and do it effectively without defaulting or having to have the contract closed out from a convenience standpoint because you didn't perform. Thanks for that question. Great question.
Sir, how does your office treat contracts where the offering is a software as a service? Can you tell us a little bit about the expense tracking and the accounting aspect of such a contract?
Not that familiar with software as a service opportunity, but I do have some folks there that work in our DASN C4I and DASN PEO EIS to go off and further those questions. So let me get that one specifically set off to the side, and I'll make sure we get an answer to that one.
Thanks, sir. Our next attendee asks, what is the Navy doing to meet HubZone goals, and how is the Small Business Office helping?
Excellent question. And HubZone goals are very near and dear to my heart, to tell you the truth. We as a government struggle to meet our HubZone requirements because small businesses have to be in that industrial area, and the people who work for that small business need to live in that same industrial area in order for it to get credit for HubZone. I would also encourage HubZone businesses to be careful. A lot of large industry partners are out there looking for HubZone partners in order to make their solicitations look better than their competitors. Don't let someone wear your HubZone badge around in order to get business for themselves, and then let's see what comes out the back end for you. Make sure you're protecting your industry and yourselves very closely against someone taking your badge and using it for purposes that aren't going to be beneficial to you. So HubZone is very special. We struggle to meet that requirement every year just because of the nature of it, and that's the entire federal government. We've met our requirements for the last 4 years running, but it's a very, very challenging requirement to meet in order to find those businesses in those opportunity zones where the workforce for that industry partner also lives in those areas. So very challenging. But for those that do find themselves there and the opportunity to grow, we're not just giving contracts out because you're a HubZone business. You still have to be able to perform and do work that's required in order to achieve aspects of the mission that the Navy and Marine Corps team has.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.
Our next attendee mentions that industry days are a valuable tool for small businesses. Is the Navy planning any virtual industry days during the remainder of this quarantine?
Absolutely. And you'll hear from the 10 major buying command members that will show up on Thursday about the number of industry day and virtual industry day opportunities that they have coming. Just maybe 2 hours before this event occurred today, I received a notice from Ms. Ann Bannister from the Naval Sea Systems Command asking about an upcoming virtual industry partner event where she's looking to have it. I believe it was in the, I don't want to specify the month at this point because it's slipping my mind, but there's already one that I know for NAVSEA that's already in the works, and you'll hear details about that on Thursday. So we're planning on, we still have to execute our business. We're still here to be your advocates for making sure that work occurs and those partnership arrangements are fostered. So they're happening. Going virtual is actually working out very well for us. I still don't see a downside to being locked away when we can conduct a lot of our business virtually instead of going places and being physically there. So we're still planning them and we're still going to execute.
Sir, is the DoD Mentor Protege Program approved by Congress now as a program of record, or is it still characterized as a pilot program? Are new agreement applications being accepted?
Yes. Okay. So for FY20, Congress approved the Mentor Protege Program to restart. It took a hiatus in FY19 and the program wasn't authorized, but it's back now in FY20. And we continue to ask Congress to make this a program that we don't have to get annual approval for. We still have to go get annual approval. It is not something that Congress has decided to approve into perpetuity, and that's allowed to run free. Annual approvals are still required as specified by Congress. We are taking Mentor Protege team agreements as we speak. And as I mentioned earlier, those are great ways to get ourselves and our industry partners moving forward. We're open for business in the Mentor Protege agreement, and OSD is with bated breath. They're waiting for more teaming agreements to come by way of the service in order to approve them for funding. So please, I highly encourage you to take full advantage of that.
Sir, how is your office ensuring that small businesses will receive a portion of the fiscal year 20 stimulus funding? The Navy is apparently receiving around $5.4 billion, and the Marine Corps apparently around $800 million. How will you make sure that small businesses are able to compete for some of that funding?
Absolutely, great question. And just 3 weeks ago, I was a part of a data call where we got the first slug of stimulus money that was sent to the Navy, and it was $250 million. And we basically took an opportunity to look across the entire small business enterprise for what industry partners are struggling to make ends meet when it comes to this money that's been provided to us due to the COVID-19 impacts. And we came up with a prioritized list. That list has gone forward to Navy, and the Navy goes forward to OSD for full vetting. And then it comes back with approval, and those funds are then distributed in that fashion. But I have an equal say with opportunities coming from small businesses as other opportunities from across the entire Navy Marine Corps enterprise get to speak for that cash, and it's a prioritization of which opportunities are going to get that funding. So we're putting you in for the opportunities. If we know about them, we're going to make sure that we champion your efforts forward. But higher authority makes ultimate decisions across the who gets what when it comes to the funding that gets spent across the Navy. But we're definitely being the advocates that we're charged to be for small businesses. Absolutely. And there's actually another data call that's occurring tomorrow, as a matter of fact, where same request. Tell us what small businesses need, give us a prioritization of how you see them, and then let's rack and stack them and go from there.
So, sir, I believe you were telling us a little bit about some increased efficiencies and some, innovative things that your office was doing in the midst of this pandemic.
Yes, absolutely. We've gone to virtual ways of being able to get our business done now, and we're not skipping a beat whatsoever. I've actually got twice a day phone calls with the staff, and we're actually getting more things done now and helping out small businesses in a more rapid way than we've ever done before. So I'm very happy with what we've done by way of being agile and adapting to our changing environment and fostering those opportunities. Email still works just as well as it did before. Phone calls work just as well as it did before. And we're just looking for opportunities to help be that advocate that we're charged to be. And if there's suggestions that folks can make for us to help further things that you see we need to do better, I'm looking forward to those opportunities too. I believe I'm on at least 6 to 7 webinars a week, to tell you the truth. So we're not slowing down and we're not closed for business, and we're looking for opportunities to do more.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Now, in order to compete in full and open situations, what is your opinion on similarly situated entities proposing on contract efforts? And also, is there any thinking about using CTAs instead of the traditional prime sub requirements?
We use every tool in the toolbox, and it's really up to acquisition managers to make sure that we have the right acquisition strategy in order to move forward with the work or products or services that they're charged to receive. Those options are completely available when we have solicitations that go out, when we're asking for our industry partners to check interest to see if anyone out there wants to even do the work. Those are great opportunities to make suggestions on ways that you see to make ourselves more efficient about getting the work done in an effective manner. And all of those are options. OTAs, working with similar situated industry partners, all great tools in the toolbox. My only caution, having grown up as a program manager, working in the submarine world primarily when I was a younger person, the one tool shouldn't be used for every situation. And we have to be generous with all of the tools in the toolbox and make sure we're not just hitting everything with a hammer and everything's a nail when you have a hammer in your hand. You just make best use of all the tools that you have in the toolbox, and that's just another great way to go about that. So we stand by for suggestions, recommendations, but it's really the decision makers that own the programs, that own the requirements, that have to deliver that capability. And we, as a small business advocates, we make sure we inject ourselves into their review processes to make sure that they haven't lost sight of a tool that's in the toolbox that maybe rarely gets used or doesn't get used as often as it needs to. So we're there to make sure that the consciousness is raised and their heightened sense of awareness is prevalent throughout those acquisition decision-making processes.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to go ahead and read our next question verbatim. As a woman-owned small business, service-disabled veteran-owned small business, and Native American-owned business that provides HR and IT services, I've found it difficult to get the Navy past performance that is required for Seaport Next Gen. I've signed up for Gold Coast already. Do you have any other suggestions to reach the primes?
I would think primes will be very amenable to doing business with you, recognizing that you have all of those badges at your disposal. Contact my office and let's work together on a strategy on building a relationship to a prime, or maybe we're not doing something quite right, or your NICS codes aren't quite right. Let's go figure out how to bridge that gap, because we're in the business of helping you grow your business. So I stand by to assist in that regard. But again, I need you to be cautious about folks that are going to come to your door wanting to do business with you. I need you to make sure that you have solid teaming agreements with these larger industry partners to make sure that they're just not wearing your badges as the business goes off to secure more and more work, making sure that you're getting your fair share and equitable piece of what that opportunity reveals itself to be. So there's some cautions about waving your badges around. I love that you have them, but there's some cautions that I want to make sure that we exercise. So let's talk directly with my office so that we can make sure that you're protected around the board here.
Sir, where can our audience find information on the 10-step process you referred to earlier?
Absolutely. Please go to our Office of Small Business Programs website. If you Google DON, which stands for Department of the Navy, OSBP, Office of Small Business Programs, that link in Google will take you to our website, and you want to go to how to do business with the Navy. And once you hit that hyperlink, you can go straight to the 10-step process, and it goes all the way to establishing yourself with the Small Business Administration, to DUNS codes, to NICS codes. It goes all the way through the process of establishing yourself as a business entity that we, the Navy, can go and do business with. And there's also instructional videos on there about how to do business with us and how the different commands and how they're petitioning the work that they do. Because if you look at the 10 major buying commands that make up the Department of the Navy, everybody buys their own thing, their own services. So you have to know your customers before you go approach someone about wanting to do business with them. Knowing their line of efforts is most important in doing your homework in order to get this opportunity seized that could be in front of you. But please visit the OSBP website. You can spend all day on that one website with the amount of resources and videos and instructions and different sets of guidance opportunities that we have on that site. Highly encourage you to visit that.
Sir, what is the Navy's appetite for leveraging OTA to access non-traditional vendors? Which procurement organizations within the Navy are leveraging OTA increasingly?
So I'll answer the last question first. Every organization within the Navy is exercising the ability to use OTAs. We see that as a mechanism of getting out in front, making the process move faster. But again, making a contract agreement with one another is a two-way street. There has to be trust on both sides. And the reason that the law and the regulations are written the way that they are when it comes to how we do contracting, that's because people have gotten burned in the past. Using OTAs, a great deal of trust needs to be exemplified on both parties' part in order to set up those streamlined agreements in order to make sure that the effective cash along with the product or services equate to one another. So it's not wild, wild west because you're using OTA. There's still rules, there's still structure, and we highly encourage the use of OTAs or normal contracting methods in order to get those products and services that we need. Prior to COVID arriving on our doorstep, Secretary Girtz actually had me setting up a trip for him to go out to Silicon Valley to visit with non-traditional industry partners so that we can go off and figure out, so how is it how can we do business with you when we don't even know what you're working on? Or your company wasn't here 3 months ago and it may not be here 6 months from now, but you've produced the thing that you wanted and you've provided it to the market and you've moved on to another venue. We want to take advantage of those opportunities to work with non-traditionals, and our contracting methods, our financial systems don't allow for us to move at that speed. OTAs are a perfect mechanism to use in order to run at speed, be agile enough to work out with an industry partner what it is we need to go do, and keep pace with those folks in a non-traditional fashion in order to get the products and services out that we need. So we're getting out of our own way in every regard, and it started long before COVID-19 arrived on our doorsteps. We were getting out of our way to go foster opportunities to do business with people that we don't historically do business with. And trying to find those folks, there isn't a directory out there that exists that says, come find me, I'm a small business and I'm working on this. We actually have to have people out in the field. We use PTACs to nobody's, we love our PTACs. In the local areas, for industry partners, I highly recommend that if your PTACs know what you're doing, they can provide that mechanism to get what you're doing, and maybe there's a military utility that we can benefit from. So make sure that you let your local PTACs know what it is you're working on so that we can go find those opportunities to find what you're doing and do business with you in an expeditious fashion. Great question, though. That was very timely before COVID-19 took us over. But
Sir, where can companies find help in starting the process for phase 3?
Phase 3 SBIR awards, and I highly encourage you to get more details on this question on Friday when Bob Smith comes along. But Phase 3 SBIR awards are the Navy's commitment, DoD's commitment that we're going to buy that particular part or component from that industry partner. And because of the data rights that exist and the partnerships that have been created to get you to the point that that material is matured for us to use it, we're making a commitment at that point. Your customer needs to be fully aware that they're buying that piece of gear from you, that company, and you alone. Putting that part out on the commercial market for future sale and continued growth, that's not what we're doing. We're going to go off and do business with that one industry partner, and there needs to be a sense of confidence that that industry partner is going to be there for the long run if you're going to get into a Phase 3 contract award. These are not opportunities that the government takes lightly to get into a Phase 3 contract award, but as I mentioned before, last year, 145 Phase 3 awards that we awarded across the Navy. And again, the Office of Naval Research furthering that opportunity through programs of record. That's how you get Phase 3 awards to be sustainable, and they run out the entire life of that project. So highly encourage you to know your customer. They have to palm for the money. They have to secure those budgets. And that part, that component needs to be sustained in a system that's providing warfighting capability or supporting the warfighting capability mission.
Thank you, sir. We have time for one more question before I hand things over to Mike Stevens. And I'm again going to read this verbatim for the benefit of our attendee. We are a subcontractor with our prime for Seaport Next Gen. Our prime is not doing anything to bid on Seaport. What can we do as a small business?
I'm struggling with why you have an unmotivated prime industry partner on Seaport, and to continue to ride on that horse that's not, it's not beneficial to anyone. I think some industry to industry meetings between yourselves and that industry partner to understand why they aren't bidding on the work, that has to be accomplished first. Again, we're not in the business of just making sure that everyone who's on a contract gets money. Those are proposals that those industry partners need to put together and submit for consideration to the government. There has to be some underlying reason why they're not motivated to do that. Or maybe they believe they've already taken on enough work from their viewpoint. So there's a discussion that needs to take place there. And from a within the government standpoint, we can only go so far between our industry partners and their arrangements with one another and the opportunities that we provide. If we're not putting out opportunities for that industry partner to bid on, or they don't think that work is worthwhile for them to invest their time and effort to develop a proposal, they may not put in for that proposal. So there's a lot of reasons why someone may not put in for it. But I think there's an industry to industry discussion that needs to take place to understand why the work isn't coming forward. Because if you serve as a prime, there's so much of the work that you need to do yourself as a part of that partnership. So if it's a 51% to 49%, 51% of that work they have to do as the prime, and then they can sub out the rest. Maybe they're at capacity. I'm not sure what the particular case is, why they're not motivated to do that, but it's not free to join Seaport, and that was making an investment. And for some reason, they aren't following through on putting in for opportunities to foster more work. But I think there needs to be a discussion on an industry to industry level there to understand why. And but we, the government, wouldn't get involved in severing that partnership that you guys have with one another. Those are binding agreements that you have with one another that didn't involve the government, other than the award of the contract for work to be done if that work comes. But please follow up with my office in a more direct fashion so we can get to the details.
Thank you, sir. I believe Mike Stevens would like to make some closing remarks.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Smith, the Navy League is privileged to be a premier provider of educational content in the maritime space. And this webinar offered our small business professionals with invaluable information. And Mr. Smith, thanks to you and your team for all you're doing in support of our Navy and Marine Corps team. It's very much appreciated by all of us. And great
Thanks,
job.
Mike. Appreciate what you're doing also. Anytime you need us, just give us a call. And we've got 3 more days, so don't get bored with us yet.
That's right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Jimmy Smith, for your presentation today. Thank you again to our sponsor, IBM, for their support. Please come back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for our session featuring Ms. Cindy Shaver, Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Procurement at the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and Thomas Frankfurt, Assistant General Counsel for the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow.